Okay, so I owe everybody a big apology because I reached out to Nick and said, can I give a lightning talk? And it was a huge misunderstanding because I wanted to talk about my lightning framework, which is something I'm super stoked about. It's a shockingly fast web framework, doesn't have any middleware security flaws in it. It's perfect for React developers. And then I found out what was actually happening, and I couldn't do it. So I'll just give you like one preview of a code sample so you can kind of see what it looks like. And maybe I'll come back next month and give the actual talk on the Lightning framework. So what I'll talk about instead is building CLIs in TypeScript. So for a little bit of context, I am building open source tools for AWS security. And every good tool uses the best programming language in the world, Bash. And so every good tool has a good CLI. And after building several CLIs, what I realized is like this is actually harder than I thought it was, building good CLIs. And also like I'm building CLIs for security and DevOps people, not developers. So think of that like grouchy person who's judging you just because you're a developer and also controls all the security. That's who I'm building CLIs for. So they've got to be really, really good. So I did a little research and found a couple very good resources. If you just Google, CLI best practices for Node apps, this person has gone through and cataloged a ton of best practices and kind of resources to help you follow those best practices around parsing arguments, doing return codes, standard in, structured arguments, etc. And they also reference this page on kind of POSIX standards for arguments, right? Because every CLI, is it like 2 dashes? Is it 1 dash? Is it a capital letter, a lowercase letter, et cetera, et cetera? What's a good standard for that? And so I settled on this. And this is kind of niche language for this, but you have a command, and if it's in square brackets, it's optional, right? So you have a command, it might have a subcommand. Those subcommands might have arguments that you pass there, or flags, which I describe as kind of booleans, right? They're false by default, but they might be true if you want to turn them on. And then the operands. So think of that as like get, add, and then the file names, right? Or get, push, force, and then the branch, right? Those sort of things. I built a library to do that. There are some very good JavaScript libraries for building CLIs and parsing arguments, but I'm a TypeScript guy, and so those are not really my type of libraries. So, all right. So let's just dive in, because I think the easiest way to do it is to just show some code. How's that look? Is that visible for everybody? Okay, great. So the meat of it is this parse CLI arguments method, and you pass some things into it. And out of the box, it will, so here we're just outputting, what's the output of that, right? And out of the box, you get some help. So you can see already, like it's auto-generated help, and so you have that. And then let's pass in some things after the command. And you can see already like it's pushed those operands in there. So let's do something a little more interesting here. So now we want to build something that takes arguments. You pass in a hash of options. So like what are those arguments? And you've got a key, and then what kind is it? How many of those do you take? Give it a description, etc. And you can specify, is it a string? Is it a number? Is it an enum? And you get all the validation on the CLI side, and then you get the types on the back end, on the other side. So you can see here like foo I defined as a single value string, bar I defined as a multiple value string. And when we look down here, we can see that foo is string or undefined. And if we were to do bar, you would see that's a string array, because that can accept multiple values and you get all of that protection. For your enums, this is super cool. Shout out to Stephen Haberman who helped me finally get this working. So like on my enum, I could pass in, here's the valid values that are allowed. And then if I look here, it's the TypeScript type is the union of those valid values or undefined because it's optional. Same thing with Booleans, right? And if you try to reference an argument that's not available, you get a compile time error, which I love. And then here, you can see I didn't specify any subcommands. So if I try to read the subcommand, it just says, hey, there is no subcommand. And we'll see a little bit later how that works. So what's great is, and we'll just go through some commands. So if we look here, cool, we get a help. And it outlines what all of our arguments are, gives us descriptions about those. You can see on our Booleans, we've got shortcodes. We'll talk about what those are a little bit. And then let's just look at what comes out. So I specified an argument and I didn't put a value after it, even though that one requires a value. So I get an error. So let's put a value in there. Cool. We see that value right here. And then what if we put multiple values on that? Any guess as to what'll happen? Is anyone listening? All right, Dylan's listening. Cool, I'll take it. Because it knows it's a single value argument, it puts the first one in foo, and then the others are considered operands. So those extra values on the end. You could take multi-value arguments, so you can see bar is ABC, and you could do as many values as you want. But let's say I wanted to do operands there. This is a fairly common Unix standard, which is anything after a double hyphen like that is considered an operand. So foo is one of the arguments to my CLI, but because it's after the two dashes, it goes here in this operands hash. So you can see just a ton of problems that you run into kind of building these things that this will solve. So here you can take multiple arguments, enums work. You can see there it's the color red. If I try to pass an invalid color, it errors, hey, red only allows these values. And then if I check my return code, it's a 2, which is, as I understand it, the standard for you pass an invalid argument to this CLI command, and that's all kind of built in. Also, one of the standards recommended is you should be able to take environment variables to default command line arguments. So if you specify an environment prefix, here I specified my app. So what's great is I could say my app color equals green, and you can see right there, my app color equals green. You can override that, no problem. And let's see, orange is invalid, but red is valid. Sorry, my app color only allows red, blue, or green. So it stops immediately and says, hey, you've done something wrong. If you aren't specific enough, like you specified an argument that didn't quite match anything, you can say that. But to be a bro, if you specify a partial argument, but that prefix only matches one argument, we'll just go ahead and figure that out for you and put that value in. Same thing with subcommands, actually. So that's arguments, and then if we look at subcommands, so this is where you can say like git add, git push, git pull, right? Add, push, pull. Those are all subcommands within Git, and this supports the same thing. So you can specify what your subcommands are, give them a description, and then each of those subcommands can have their own arguments that operate the same way as kind of the global arguments. So here I've got 3. I've got init, download, which has some arguments of its own, and then, oh wait, did I miss something here? I did. Let me go back real quick and do these real quick. So the Booleans are cool. So AMA, I've got 3 Booleans here. I've got amazing, spectacular, and fantastic. So if I specify like AMA, that only matches 1, and you can see amazing is true. Then I can specify just like the -a, because if we look at the help, Let's do this. You get this for free, by the way, also this dash help. All of the Booleans have like a single letter that you can just use for that. So if I do like dash A, and they start with one dash. So dash A, amazing is true. Let's do dash A, dash S. Okay, now amazing and spectacular are true. But I can also combine those because they're all a single letter and they all start with that single dash. So I can do like ASF, and now all three of those are true. So the flags have really nice Boolean shorthand on them. Okay, so looking at the subcommands, I've got a few different subcommands here. If I look at, so what's cool about this is the subcommand here, again, is limited to a union of the possible values, and you can even require a subcommand, which will cause the CLI to error if you don't provide a subcommand. And it'll change the type here. It'll remove the undefined. So it's automatically kind of detecting that and updating that. And then the other cool thing is the arguments are scoped. So like the subcommand download had its own arguments that only applied for that subcommand. And you can see here endpoint fails if I try to get it out of the arguments object here. But once you do the check of the subcommand is download, that narrows the type down, and I'm able to get the endpoint type, attribute off of the arguments, and that's checked by the compiler. So let's see here. So what's cool is you get you get free help, right? So this here it lists out your subcommands and your global arguments. And then if you want to see help on a specific command, you can see that. So here's the help for download, and it talks about what are the options just for download. And let's see. And then you get subcommand specific arguments. And if I try to use an argument with the wrong subcommand, so endpoint is available on download, not on any other subcommand, I can do that, and it fails, saying, hey, you did that wrong. And then the last thing it helps with is reading from standard in, which is like an embarrassingly hard thing for me to have figured out, just in terms of like kind of sometimes the pipe opens, and if you're reading from the internet, it can take a while, and then you've got some threads and some closing of streams and things like that. So it's got a handy method to read from standard in. And so if we just look at that real quick, you can kind of see, okay, nothing came from standard in that time, but you can pipe to it, and there it is, or even just like curl straight to that command. You can see it's pulling in random numbers for every single one of those and like waiting for that to complete. So this is syntax I specifically chose because it will look very familiar to anybody that works with AWS, kind of following those same conventions. But I thought it was pretty handy and useful, so I wanted to share. So that's it for me. Just wanted to show that. I do have a couple asks. I've got a couple QR codes here. If you could send your mom a link to the repo and ask her to give it a star, please. I am an open source developer, and internet points mean a lot, so I would appreciate that. And then if you do use AWS, I make open source tools for people that work with security in AWS, so check those out as well. Any questions? All right, thanks.